Hey guys, Chris here back with another vendor voice. I'm super excited today. I've got Phil on with us from Coast Pay. And Phil, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Good, man. We're super excited. The topic today, as we jump in and dive into this, I want people to understand that this is not just about fleet cards. This is about controlling expenses with your team members in the field. This is going to be a vendor voice that's specifically focused on cost control. And Phil's going to be helping us today. And one of the things, Phil, that you and I were talking about before we hopped on here, I go back to my days of, quote, I'm not even going to call the company name that I used, but nonetheless, it was a fleet card. But maybe, Phil, tell me a little bit about Coast and who you guys are, because I want our audience to know that this is not just another fleet card.
Yeah, absolutely. So Coast is a fuel card predominantly, but it's built on the Visa network, and so we have a lot more capabilities than your traditional fuel card or what people assume a fuel or a fleet card does. And so what we've done is taken a look at the industry, what the options are for folks, and found a way to provide more controls around all the other expenses that are happening in the field on one consolidated program. So as opposed to managing a purchasing card or a corporate card in one place and your fuel card in another system. We've given our clients and folks within the industry the ability to consolidate those expenses in one place, provide more controls on how those cards are used in the field, so that you as a business owner or an admin can feel really confident if you're distributing credit cards or fuel cards to employees, you know exactly what they're being used for and to the last dollar.
Gosh, cost controls. Phil, this is music to my ear, and the reason why is because I've always been against just handing out credit cards like almost like gift cards. Everybody, you get one, and then you got to control all the spends, you got all the reconciling. And so we're going to talk a little bit more in this episode about Coast and some of the things you guys do in addition. But before we get going, let's just talk about the fleet and fuel today for a moment. Phil, share with me what you consider to be maybe the top three challenges that business owners face, specifically around fuel and fleet.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we're dealing with these conversations every single day. And, I think just to kind of take a look at the industry as a whole, there has been a ton of innovation over the last 20, 30 years, right? If you're listening in on this call, there's only a handful of options that exist in the market. If you're looking for this product category, you're looking to manage fuel expenses, give people a way to pay for fuel in the field. And you've sought out this product category, right, for a few major reasons. One, right, is liability. With this industry, right, and the broader home services landscape, they face a unique set of challenges, right, where even the most entry level employees need access to a company credit card to pay for fuel for the company vehicle, right? And so it opens you up to a level of exposure that other businesses that just quite frankly don't have to deal with. And so like the first thing, right, where we see is like the biggest challenge, or area of opportunity to optimize is around kind of theft and misuse. And whether it's happening or not,
Right.
it's really hard to track, and have 100% certainty, whether these things are happening under your nose, right? And we hear it all the time, right? I trust my guys. I want to trust my employees, right? I've built a culture within our business that, I have confidence in the folks out in the field. And you should, right? But at the same time, there needs to be controls in place to make sure that these cards are being reused appropriately. And so if you think about all of the, horror stories of theft, of misuse, right, of folks filling up their personal car or telling their friend to meet them at the gas station, right, or just doing things where they figured out how to kind of skirt the system. No one's ever going to, notice the one or two transactions where you filled up a personal vehicle in a given month. But these things add up, right? And it's outside of policy. And so I think that's like, the biggest kind of overarching theme that we're trying to solve and is a big pain point for folks in the industry.
So you say trust but verify, right? Let's put some controls in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
It would be like, hey, well, then why do we lock certain doors around the office, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
only people with the key need access. I'd like to tell a story for our audience today about Barry. And without having proper controls in on fleet, I just tell you the story. Yeah, hey, you got fleet cards, and yeah, there's a PIN number, but yeah, and yeah, by the way, we're entering mileage, but the question is, are you reading reports? And my guess is today, Phil, that now with automation and technology, there's probably something in place that will flag things that are suspicious. And I tell the story about Barry, how Barry pulled up, entering his driver number, entering his mileage, filled up his vehicle, left the pump laying down on the ground, pulled off. Wife pulls up, fills up the car, hangs it up, good to go. If I'm not reading a report and know what's going on there, that slides right through. Phil, how today could Coast help with something like that?
Yeah, that's kind of like the first pain point that we set out to solve when we built the program a handful of years ago. And so, yeah, we are, proactively monitoring these transactions in real time, right? If you tell us the work vehicle takes 20 gallons, if we see a purchase for 21 gallons, guess what? You're getting an alert. There's a flag in the system on that transaction. It's coming to you via text, via email, however you want to receive that, all in real time. And so it's not someone's responsibility at the end of the month to audit that statement, right? To comb through it, look for a transaction that, may be more expensive than another one, and then have to confront an employee after the fact. And so, all of what we kind of do is transaction monitoring, setting flags or notifications for things that we deem to be suspicious, presenting that to you in real time, and then allowing you to action against that as soon as it happens. A lot
Mm,
of these things kind of police themselves out over time once people know they're being watched, right? If this information is at your fingertips, chances are people stop, bending the rules or breaking the rules, when they know you're kind of in control of that.
yeah, I heard one of my mentors say it this way. He said, Chris, you can change the outcome when you narrow down the corridor of acceptable behavior. And that's what we're talking about. When team members know what acceptable behavior is, well, Phil, okay, well, it's fuel and it's maintenance. I can run down to the oil change place and I can get that done and some maintenance items. And I want to have these things in place. And I got a fleet card. But Phil, maybe tell me a little bit different of Coast concept because in my business, I used a specific card assigned to a specific vehicle, and we know the headaches that comes and goes with that. But that was the way it was set up with the way the program was. But tell me a little bit about what Coast has done to be a little different there.
Yeah. I think that kind of parlays really nicely into the other challenges we see with these programs today. And it's all around card management, right? You put in place a fuel card program because you wanted to get away from credit cards because there's just too much exposure and liability associated with them. And you want the tracking at the vehicle level, right? That's what it comes down to. That's why you sought out this category. What happens with some of these traditional programs is, facilitating kind of the card management becomes a full-time job for someone, right? You are distributing, cards to all of your individuals who are living in the vehicle in the glove box. And what happens is, these cards get misplaced, they get stolen. Someone puts it in their wallet by accident, and then someone else gets in that vehicle, and there's no fuel card in there, right? And so,
Um,
what are you doing as the administrator of the program? You're constantly on the phone with the fuel card company. You're constantly ordering new cards for those vehicles, and then so, what are you doing in the interim? You're using replacement cards. You're not having the tracking that you kind of built or bought this program for. And so the idea of managing this program is someone's full-time job, so to speak. And so we've kind of removed this idea that the card has to be permanently assigned to a vehicle, and rather let's have our employees check into a vehicle and tell us, what vehicle they're in that day. And so then when they use that card, we know every single time what person's using it and for what vehicle. And we really don't care where the cards end up because they're checking into that card to go ahead and use it. And so it alleviates a lot of the back and forth between the driver and the admin, right? Finding these cards, putting them in the right vehicles, making sure you have the reporting, and helps the drivers out too, right? Because they're not tied to the fact that they need to be using a specific card on a specific vehicle.
Mm. Yeah, I never forget the old oh gosh, somebody is out driving a spare vehicle and they're stopping to get fuel and they're like, I can't find the fuel card. Well, it's because the last person that was driving it when they got fuel just stuck it in their front pocket and then it gets washed and then it gets lost. And I mean, just the chaos that ensues in a business when people can't get gas and then they're trying to use their own personal card. But the crux of it all, Phil, is then all of the things that you signed up for a fleet card for, throw it out the window, right? So
Yeah.
in walks human beings, and now all of a sudden we've got chaos on our hands. Maybe tell me a little bit more about some other challenges that you feel like contractors face.
Yeah. So, as a home service business or a contractor, there's always other ancillary purchases that are happening out in the field, right? And so, whether you're picking up materials or supplies, or you have to head to a hardware store or go pick up, an extra part, or rent a piece of equipment, all of this stuff is happening in real time. And for the most part, right, it's happening on other ways to pay, right? Whether you're giving specific people in the business a purchasing card who have reached a certain level, or you have to call in and get a credit card number over the phone, or you have house accounts and you're trusting that people are spending up to limits that they are allowed to spend. So all of these different ways to pay. And then when the dust settles, right, all I want to do as kind of a business owner or an admin or a controller is understand how much did Chris spend in a given month, right? And to be able to kind of solve that answer, I have to go through all these different channels. I have to look at all these different systems. And so what we've done to kind of alleviate a lot of these multiple program, issues is, how can we solve that on one piece of plastic? And so if at its core, our program is a Visa card, right? And so, you get the luxury of the Visa network. That means it can work anywhere if you choose it to do so.
Hang on,
And
wait.
so we,
Hang on, Phil. I want
yeah,
everybody to hear that. So this is no longer your traditional fleet card. I tell a story of my technicians that were out on Longboat Key. For those that don't know where Longboat Key is, I'm based in Florida. Longboat Key, it's 45 minutes from civilization. There is no part stores, there's no anything unless you have an account with Ace Hardware, of which we did not. So my option was to have my technician buy the material and then reimburse, and that just didn't feel good. So, Phil, if only I had would have known you guys back then, we could have had it turned on where they could use the A. So if I'm hearing you correctly, this is you can turn it on. They can buy anything, anywhere, or limits, vendors. Tell me a little bit more about that because now I'm
that's
very
correct.
intrigued that one card, and maybe Phil, that might be y'all's key. The one piece of plastic that does everything.
Yeah, yeah. And when I first tell this to people, they're like, "Oh, I don't want them being able to spend it anywhere. I don't want them to have a regular credit card. These guys don't need this, or these people don't need this." And that's kind of the beauty of the program, right? Is at its core, it's locked down, right? It's not open to anything. The first thing we do is we open up to fuel only at gas stations, right? So it solves kind of that fuel use case that you're looking at this category for. And then what we can do based off of the permissions or kind of who that employee is or who that group of employees are, is be able to open up other spending categories. And we do it with really refined controls. And so you might have said, hey, Chris is driving a Sprinter van. It should be filled up twice a day, no more. And it should be filled up no more than $100 of gas. And so we set that limit on the fuel side. What we can do is take those same controls and apply it to other categories. And so if you choose to do so, I can have my technicians be able to go to a hardware store twice a week for no more than $400. If they try and swipe that card at a bar or at a restaurant, they would get declined. If they go to a grocery store, they're getting declined. But if they go to a hardware store, they're going to have a $200 limit on that card that they have access to. And so now you have the flexibility to use this card where you need, but you're not opening it up to a $10,000 global limit and saying, hey, at the end of the month, make sure to turn in your receipts for whatever you put on the credit card. And so you limit your exposure, you limit your liability to exactly where these cards should be used and not where they shouldn't. and up to the certain dollar amount that you deem, acceptable for that individual.
Yeah, wow, that's so powerful, Phil. So in walks Coast with the one piece of plastic that does it all. And here's what I'm loving, Phil, the word flexibility. If I just want to use it for this, I can. So and I'll ask then, Phil, what if I've got technicians and then I've also got, say, installers and I've got salespeople? Can I change the permissions across based on that?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
what if I've got a wow, yeah, you can do that as well. What if I've got a field supervisor, Phil, where I say this is only a fleet card, but for this field supervisor, it's also this and this.
Yeah, it is that dynamic where it
Wow.
could be groups of individuals, it could be one individual on the policy. You have the flexibility to design the program however it works for your business, right? And so if you were, in a situation where I don't really see it very often, but you had, 10 individuals with 10 different spending capabilities, you could have them all on their own custom spend policies that down to the last dollar at the last merchant, they would have access to be able to use the card. Traditionally, how we kind of set it up is I have my technicians, they're on one policy, my field sales managers are on another policy, my office managers are on another policy, and then we permission them based off that group. And then these things are all in real time. So if you have to go in and make changes, as soon as you change that policy, it'll reflect as soon as they swipe the card. So it's very, very dynamic and updates in that manner.
So Phil, you're telling me spend limits. This is always my concern, right? So, all right, well now what if they can spend at the gas station? Can you lock it down to its only fuel and not be able to go in
Yeah,
and buy a Coke and a
yeah.
candy bar as well?
Yeah, so it's hard coded in the plastic. If you try to put anything else on the receipt at a gas station, you're automatically getting declined. So, at its core, it's going to do all of the fuel card things that you might be familiar with or what you've kind of researched or heard about. We kind of take it to another level on the fuel card side. That's like, that's our core business, right? Is protecting people from kind of, misuse or theft on the fuel side. And
Hmm.
so that's like, plugging in with your GPS provider in real time, right? Knowing where all of your vehicles are at any given moment. Guess what? If you try and use one of our cards and your company vehicle isn't at the gas station, no dice. The card doesn't work. It'll get declined, right? And so
Oh,
there is a
wow.
lot of kind of, parameters or controls we put in on the fuel side because that's where we see kind of the biggest concern around theft or abuse. And so locking it down by day and time, getting alerts for suspicious transactions, all of this is flowing to you without having to kind of sift through data or have to understand where things are located.
So you guys are actually allowed to set up alerts, email or text message. Can you change the type of alerts? Like someone has tried to make a purchase at a vendor versus someone's over a spend limit versus
Absolutely. So you get kind of detailed information as to, what happened. You have the full story. I think like one of the coolest things is with like the GPS integration. So if you're using one of the telematics providers, we integrate with almost all of the big ones. If your employee tries to make a purchase and the company vehicle wasn't at the fuel station, not only are we declining that transaction, we're showing you a map of where that vehicle was located when the card was swiped.
what?
So you can point exactly to kind of the story without having to get back into a back and forth argument with someone about how I was actually there or I was here or this happened or this happened. The proof is in the pudding there. And so, yeah, we arm you with all of the tools you need without kind of, over incumbinating you with like things that might be unnecessary.
Wow, cost control at its finest in the field. Phil, I'm so glad that I had you on today. I told you I was pleasantly surprised as you and I started digging in. Just really overwhelmed and excited that no longer is cost control just related to a fleet. And once again, it's multiple cards I'm trying to keep up with. As a team member, I've got my gas card, but then I've got my spending card, and then I've got this card. So Phil, I'm so happy that you took this opportunity to join us today on the Vendor Voice. Phil, is there any kind of final thoughts that you've got for us today as we start to wrap up?
No, I think that about covers it, and I appreciate you having me on today, Chris. This is stuff we love to talk about. We invest heavily in this space. We are talking to contractors of all shapes and sizes, trying to figure out what their needs are, where are the gaps that exist today with their current processes. how can we automate things so that you're not responsible for doing everything yourself? And with the whole goal of like getting you to spend less, right? Most credit cards out there today, they're throwing you offers to do this, do this, to spend here. And our focus is if we can lower your fuel bill by 10%, we've done our job. And so,
Mm.
that's kind of our real mission when it comes down to it.
Awesome. Phil, I'm super excited that you shared this with our audience here today, but don't go away. And this is the reason why. Now we're getting into the bonus round, what we like to call Fun Facts Finale. We're going to learn a little bit more about Phil today. And Phil, I got a few questions for you here in the Fun Facts Finale. Do me a favor, just answer them right off the cup. Imagine this. I'd ask the question, do birds have the ability to speak different language? In other words, can a duck communicate with a chicken or a dove with a pigeon?
I would say no.
Okay, right on. Pineapple belong on pizza? Yes or no?
I would say no.
Oh, we're all in the nose. This is strike three. Then, if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Uh, I'd probably choose flying because flights are pretty expensive.
Gotcha. And Phil, I don't know if you karaoke or not, but if you were put on stage and you had to sing one karaoke song, which one would it be?
Um, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi.
Oh, I was wondering if that one's ever going to hit the list. And then I got two more questions for you, Phil. What's the weirdest food you've ever tried?
Oh man. I mean, it's weird for the Northeast, but it's not going to be weird from down there. But I've eaten gator, so
Oh, heck yeah. That's good stuff right there. Most
yeah,
people don't realize this, but much like fowl, there in an alligator, you have dark meat and white meat. I don't know if you know the difference, but if you do know the difference, do you have a favorite on it?
I don't. But I would
Okay.
assume I would assume white meat.
Yeah, right on. Here's the last one. You ready?
Yeah,
Which one goes together better? Peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate?
peanut butter and chocolate for me.
Peanut butter and chocolate. You guys heard it. Hey, another vendor voice, Phil, with Coast. Thank you so much, man, for joining in with us and sharing us information. To learn more about Coast, Phil, how can people find out more about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you could come directly to our website, coastpay.com. If you're a part of the Blue Collar Success Route and the Elite Buy program, we've got a partnership in place, and so reach out to your point of contact there. They're happy to make an introduction, and we can get set up some time.
Awesome. Phil, thank you so much for your time again today. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching another vendor voice. Phil, thanks for all the fun and all the great information today.
Take care. Good to see you guys.
Thank you for watching this video and subscribing. Do us a favor, comment below and tell us what your thoughts are and what your takeaways are. Remember, you're either winning or you're learning.